Protests against China's communist government are few and far between these days, but that's not stopping the so-called umbrella revolution in Hong Kong. The numbers of protesters in the streets there are growing. The demonstrators want democracy, a free choice of candidates in the upcoming election instead of just the ones Beijing agrees can be put on the ballot. That's led to tear gas and clashes with police, but neither side is backing down. Today, Hong Kong's leader said China won't change its mind on voting reforms, and pro-democracy protesters are back on the streets for a fifth day. Now the White House is weighing in as well.
We have been very consistent in voicing our support to the People's Republic of China for universal suffrage and for the aspirations of the Hong Kong people, and we're going to continue to do so.
Despite coming under Chinese control in 1997, Hong Kong has always been somewhat removed from China, culturally and politically, and the demonstrations are putting Beijing in a tough spot. Chinese officials worry that if the protests go on, they could spread to the mainland. But with the world watching, they may not have the stomach to launch a crackdown. NBC's Ian Williams has more from Hong Kong.
It's evening here in Hong Kong and the crowds are growing again on the fifth day of protests that are fast turning into the biggest challenge to Beijing since the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989. It's National Day holiday in China tomorrow, and that will be marked here in Hong Kong with a massive stepping up of protests aimed at paralyzing the heart of this city.
Joining me on the phone is the Asia editor for Time International, Zohair Abdul Karim. And Zohair, thank you so much for joining us. You tweeted on September 28th, surely this is the end of Hong Kong as we've known it. What did you mean by that?
Well, the thing is that, what you mentioned earlier, Luke, is that Hong Kong has always been a little separate from the rest of China, even after the return of the territory to China in 1997. The Chinese promised that Hong Kong would be governed under an innovative, but not tested before, template of one country, two systems. And for the first few years after the handover in 1997, things were actually pretty good. We actually had economic problems, but not political problems. But what has happened in recent years, and particularly ever since the new leadership under Xi Jinping came to power in China, is that there has been a harder line not only towards Hong Kong, but basically by China in general. And now, when on August 31st, the Chinese authorities announced that Hong Kong would have a very restricted and limited democratic election system, basically that was the last straw. So what I meant was, the way that Hong Kong has been under the British and for a period after its return to China, that is changing, and probably is changing for good.
Over the last few years, there have been a lot of reports about just rampant corruption within the ruling party on the Chinese mainland. I've read one analyst's perspective that perhaps maybe the crackdown on Hong Kong is a sort of move to try and shore up a hard-line support in China, this idea that we're not messing around. How much does the corruption within the ruling party affect this?
The president, Xi Jinping, has made anti-corruption, cleaning up corruption, a really big part of his agenda. And there's several reasons why he's doing this. One, because it's good to do. Two, he thinks that China needs to reform economically, and that he needs to get rid of this scourge. But also, there's a political agenda. It does help him get rid of political opponents. I think we have to acknowledge that. And I think the fourth reason is that it is a popular thing. Xi Jinping at home among the public is actually quite popular because he's a strong leader, he's a nationalist leader, and the Chinese do like strength. Whether this is a factor in the Hong Kong thing, I think the relevance is that he basically believes that China should be assertive and even aggressive in its dealings with its neighbors over these maritime disputes. It's been quite aggressive. So, Hong Kong is asking for democracy now, but the timing isn't that good because they're asking at a time when China itself is being quite hardline.
Yeah, quite nationalistic. Zohair
Yes.
Abdul Karim, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.